right, we are going to discuss the importance of gratitude now that you have watched Father Mike Schmitz's video. Um, it is important to always be thankful because God gives us so many blessings in our lives. And a lot of times I think that we stop thinking about those blessings if we're going through something that's difficult. And it's hard when we're having a tough time to see what we still have to be thankful for in our lives, because sometimes that bad stuff just overshadows all of the good stuff. Um, but it is important to remember that we do have a lot of blessings, no matter how rough life might seem at one point or another. The first blessing that we can always give thanks for, no matter what is going on in our lives, is for God's mercy and for His love and His gifts to us. God created us. God loves us. God gave His Son, Jesus Christ, for us. Jesus sacrificed His life for us. We have the opportunity for eternal salvation with God, to live forever with Him in heaven. And that is a huge gift to us that we should never stop being grateful for, no matter how difficult things are, because our life, it ultimately is not about our life here on earth, but about focusing on the life that we hope to have with God in heaven once our time here on earth is over. So our time here on earth is important in the sense that we live a life that is worthy of being in heaven with God, as at least as worthy as any human being can hope to get. We should try to be the best people we can, to love God, to follow His commandments and His instructions. But ultimately, God has given us salvation as a gift. We should also be thanking God for the little things around us. Just because something bad is happening, or a lot of bad things are happening, does not mean that every single thing in one's life is bad. And that could even be something like seeing a beautiful sunset and thanking God for being able to look at something beautiful for just a moment. Seeing deer in the backyard, or having a song come on the radio that you really like, to hitting all the green lights when you're driving to work. There's always little tiny things that you can find to be thankful for going on in life around you. And that includes the things that we don't usually think about. That's access to medical care, to dentists and doctors, to keep us healthy. That is the fact that if your ears work, like Father Mike said, you're not deaf. If your eyes work, you're not blind. If your legs work, you're not paralyzed. And even if you are going through those things, if you're blind, we have Braille. If you're deaf, we have all of these text-to-talk programs now and technologies to help with that. There's just always, as you go down the line, something to be grateful for. I would like to just briefly share a story of my own that I'm currently walking through. I, about 4 or 5 months ago, was in the worst pain I've ever been in my life. Neck pain, back pain, arm pain. It was awful. Like, I was curled up in a ball crying. And this went on for several weeks, and I had x-rays done, and they said that I just had muscle spasms, and I took some medication for that, and it didn't get better. And I went back, and I had a CAT scan done, and all of these other tests done, and finally, after about 2 months, they figured out that I had 3 disintegrated discs in my neck. So I have to have major surgery this winter to replace those. And when the doctor walked in and he said, "We finally figured it out," he goes, but I'm sorry, you're going to have major surgery. You're going to have spinal surgery." I said, "That's fantastic." And he looked at me funny. But it's because after spending so much time hurting and not knowing what the cause was, I was so grateful to have an answer. So even though it was a difficult time, there was still something that could be found to be thankful for. So it's important to always focus on things like that. So even though I was still in pain, and even though I was and am going to have surgery, it was such a relief to know what the cause was, and it was also such a relief to know that it was a cause that had a solution, because there's a lot of people that have chronic pain that don't have a solution to that pain. So I tried to focus everything that I felt onto the gratitude that I felt, um, to knowing that there was a solution and to knowing that there was a label to what was happening, so that it could be fixed. So that's just a real life example of something, tough that someone might be going through, but still finding ways to be thankful. And I think that you'll find if you spend more time trying to be, grateful and in the moment, and still looking for blessings in your life, even when it's hard, that you will have a more positive attitude and you'll be able to handle those, negative times, those sad times, those troubling times, a little bit better by doing that. So, because of that, I wanted to read one of the, really important parables in the Bible. It's the parable of the 10 lepers. It is in, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. Two quick things to know, and think about before we read the passage is that, lepers who had the illness of leprosy, which causes, lesions, sores, skin rashes, because of that, they were considered unclean by Jewish law. So they were not allowed to associate with Jews who were clean, so that they didn't transfer to them their uncleanliness. So they were not really supposed to come into contact with people. They weren't really supposed to be in the public sphere, like in the marketplaces and things like that. They were exiled to their own colonies. They didn't have, homes with their families. So there was a big separation there. It's also important to remember, that Jews and Samaritans did not like each other at all. This is important because one of the characters in this parable, is a Samaritan. So keep that in mind. Jews considered Samaritans to be beneath them, almost without class, almost like they were, kind of like animals. The Jews really discriminated against them. They didn't have friendship with them or fellowship with them, and they were not allowed by Jewish law to share anything with them. And a large part of that is because, they considered the Samaritans to not be holy, to not have the correct, worship practices for God, and they were just a completely separate group that didn't worship the way that the Jews thought was appropriate. So, on the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. When Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." So we see through this story that, Jesus heals 10 people, and then he tells them to show themselves to the priest, because that's what you had to do if you had something that made you unclean, like a skin rash or a lesion, and it went away. You had to show it to the priest that it was gone so that they could declare you, to be clean. And they were on this journey to go see the priest. Only one leper noticed that his leprosy was, well, they noticed their leprosy was gone, but only one of them decided that, oh, I should go back and thank the guy that made me better. So he went back to thank Jesus, and Jesus was shocked, not only because only one person came back to say thank you, but because the one person that came back was, a foreign person that most Jews thought were classless and, not very holy, not very nice, and yet it's this one foreign person that they pictured to be that way is the one that's coming back to say thank you. So Jesus was pointing out that just because, you are Jewish doesn't mean that you're holier or better than, anybody else at that time. It's the manner of your heart and, what kind of heart you have for others and what kind of character you have, instead of just, what rules do you follow, what laws do you follow. So that was very important. So he was healed permanently and the others were not. And that is all thanks to gratitude. So there's a couple questions that follow this, and then we will go into a video on the activities that are included in your packets.